All right. Now, just as I did with previous introductions of faiths and what I did just now with the Jewish faith, I want an establishment of the Christian faith as it will be discussed and reflected in the art for this class. I put this disclaimer here because when we talk about faiths that are still practiced today, many students can get uncomfortable. I want you to recognize that I am informing you of what the art is saying. I am not preaching to you. I'm also not giving a class on theology. And so I'm giving you basics of these faiths as they relate to the artworks, and in no way, shape, or form are inclusive of all discussions or all elements of the faith, because this is not a theology class, it's an art history class. So let me introduce you to the Christian world during the late antiquity period. First, the early Christian period historians define as between the 1st and the 7th centuries. And that is because it begins with the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth around the year of 30 CE. Jesus of Nazareth, his name indicates that he grew up in the city of Nazareth, was seen as a prophet who preached the moral reforms in Jerusalem, Judea's capital city in the Roman Empire. And these moral reforms that Jesus was preaching caused problems within Jerusalem and throughout the Jewish people because of his contempt for the form and the ceremony that was being practiced. He was arrested and he was tried for blasphemy and condemned and then handed over to the Roman governor of Judea. His name was Pontius Pilate, and Pontius Pilate took this information and understood Jesus to then be traitorous because of his preachings that they should only worship one God, right? And that the Jewish people did not see him as part of them. So therefore, he was not within the safety of being a grandfathered in religion or faith. And so Pontius Pilate practices the Roman rule against treason, which is crucifixion. And Jesus is crucified, and his teachings then are spread amongst his followers, his faithful. And the faith is called Christianity because one of the names given to Jesus was Christos. Christos, which is not Hebrew, it's Greek. In the dissemination of information about Jesus, many people around spoke Greek, read Greek, and so his teachings were translated into Greek, and he himself was given the name Christos, which is Greek for the anointed one. Christos becomes Christian, those who follow Christos, the anointed one, Jesus. I bring this in because not only do I love language, I love how words come together, but we see within that the Hebrew word for Jesus is then not translated, but is given another Greek name, Christos, because we know of the Hellenistic area and the fact that many Romans would have been bilingual, speaking Greek and Latin, and so this limited connection or limited speaking and reading of Hebrew is expanded when it's translated into Greek, and we get Christos from Greek, and the word Christian meaning follower of Christos, follower of the anointed one, Christ. Okay. The other reason I bring this up isn't just because of words, but because of this symbol right here. Let me just move up a little bit. So you see it, there is this P that is being crossed by this X. What you're actually reading are the first 3 letters of Christos in Greek. This right here, if we were to read the Greek alphabet and read that, it would read Christos. And the first 3 letters XPI. We say XPI. In Greek, you would pronounce it chi rho iota. Do you see the chi rho iota here? The chi is the X, the rho is the P, and then the baseline of that P is the I, or the iota. The chi rho iota. I need you to write this down. I want you to put the symbol in your notes because it's going to continue throughout this semester. Chi rho iota, or XPI. This three first letters of his name in Greek become a shorthand for Christos, for Christianity. And we're going to see it used as a symbol, not just as a mashup of letters, but a symbol of Christ. Got it? Okay, good. Let's reiterate how this works out. So X, P, I. Chi rho iota, or chi rho iota. Okay? That's the Greek first letters of his name. And then you might also see in Christian art let me see, IHS. IHS is the Latinized version of the name Jesus. So not Christos, but Jesus. Okay? And then one more, just because. Okay, then you might also see INRI. You might see INRI, and that is Latin shorthand for Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. I know. If it confuses you or makes you overwhelmed, I'm sorry. But these are types of shorthands, IXPI and the others, that are often then supplanted into art. One other thing that we need to realize about the Jewish faith is that the Christian faith, is that it is a continuation of the Jewish faith, that it is established within the Jewish religion. Jesus is a Jew, and he is preaching for reforms of the Jewish faith. When these reforms are not accepted, that is when we see the evolution or the development of the Christian, those who follow Christos, those who follow the reforms of Jesus from the Jewish faith. In addition, when we use these, when we look at the art, I'm going to be using words like pagan. So let me define pagan for us. Pagan. Pagan is a disparaging and often offensive term that is used to describe a person who is not a Christian, a Jew, or a Muslim. I know, we have not gotten into the Islamic faith. We will in a few weeks, but bear with me. Okay, so pagan is those who are not of the faith of the Jews, and then the Christians, and then the later reforms of the Islamic faith. So we got the Jewish faith, which becomes or develops into the Christian faith, which then develops a Muslim faith, or the Islamic faith, I should say. Paganism is a disparaging remark for anyone who is not of this lineage, Jewish, Christian, or Muslim. Does that make sense? We use this term when we are describing things that are not of this faith, and so basically it's everything that we've been looking at. It's all of the temple structures. It's all of the polytheistic faiths. Here, I've given you Marcus Aurelius, a portrait of Marcus Aurelius, and he's in front of a temple to the gods. Here we have our plan of the temple of Aphaea at Aegina. So in the height of the Roman Empire, most people are pagan. The Roman state religion is polytheistic, right? Worship of many gods. And they embrace the many hybrids all over the empire. The Romans had constant problems with the Jewish faith because of its monotheism. And then this new development, a people that define themselves as not Jewish, but of a new monotheistic faith, this becomes a bigger problem to the Romans. They forbade the worship of this Christian, followers of Christos, faith because they believed it to compromise the safety of the empire. And remember, happy gods, happy people. If they don't worship the Roman gods, then there's going to be problems and everybody suffers. The first historical record of Christians appearing in Rome, the city of Rome, is around 40 CE, about 10 years after the death of Jesus. And immediately, this new faith is not only seen as a threat, but is declared illegal. So the Christian faith becomes illegal, not allowed to be practiced in the open, not tolerated in this empire. And throughout the development of the faith, and we'll say the death of Jesus in 30-ish, and then throughout late antiquity, the Christian faith is an underground faith, and its followers will spread the word, but it will do this with dangerous consequences. I didn't emphasize it at the time, but various emperors will conduct massive persecutions of Christians. I know that Trajan, remember the Forum of Trajan? Trajan receives word from some of his generals at the outposts about these Christians and what should I do with them. And so he establishes these rules of rooting them out by making them worship at the altars of multiple gods. And if they don't, then they're found to be Christians and therefore are traitors and must be killed. Diocletian, the emperor who established the Tetrarchy, one of his ideas for containing or controlling and reestablishing the empire was to rid the empire of the traitorous Christians. And so there are massive massacres of people under Diocletian with the idea of cleansing the empire of the Christian faith. I mention these things because, remarkably, throughout these 300 years of constant fear and persecution, the faith spreads. This is a map showing that spread over that same 300-year period. And the darker areas are the first to be established. And so if we notice, there is a pattern here. There is a connection that the earliest areas of the Christian faith are in major cities, not just any major cities, port towns. The Christian faith establishes itself, it grows, it develops in cities, and then it very slowly will spread to the surrounding countryside. But just like news spreads, it starts in condensed areas and then it will spread out. That is what we see over the 300 years of the Christian faith. Now, if we were in class together, one student may raise a hand and say, how is this possible? How would a faith that is illegal for 300 years spread so quickly? That's a very good question. It is not the only faith that established and spread throughout the empire at this time. In addition to the Christian faith, we also see the rise of another monotheistic faith called Mithras or Mithraism. And we see, we already saw the cult of Serapis, right? Our priest of Serapis with that medallion. Technically, Serapis is part of a larger polytheistic faith, but we see this increase in worship of Serapis. Mithras, we are not even going to get into in this class, but he's another singular god that became extremely popular during this period of the Roman Empire. There's Oh, goodness gracious. There's a few other ones I'm thinking of. And historians, theologians argue that the development, or I should say the rise in popularity of these newer faiths, like Serapis, like Mithras, like Jesus or Christos, has to do a lot with what is happening in the world at this time. While these Jewish faith, or sorry, the Christian faith is illegal, Mithras is accepted because he's seen as a hybrid of Baal, the Babylonian god. I know, I'm so sorry. I'm getting way off topic here. Okay. Okay. The rise in these alternate faiths during the Roman Empire, many historians and theologians attribute to the rise in warfare, the rise in death, the rise in mortality rates of the larger Roman Empire and its citizens, the rise in disease and hunger and starvation. All these terrible things lead to a rise in alternate faiths? Yes, absolutely. Why? Well, because there is an increase in the pursuit of spiritual order over material order, to remove from the suffering that you are physically experiencing and focus on your inner soul rather than your body, your spiritual value over your physical value. Also, at this time, we see an increased gap between the rich and the poor. The poor are heavily taxed to pay for all this warfare, to accommodate for all of these food shortages. And there's for them, for the poor, there's really no hope of salvation here on earth. And so they are focused on the promise of salvation after life. And many of these faiths, including the Christian faith, speak and emphasize a promise of a afterlife and salvation, saving, not just to continue, but to have a better life in the afterlife. So people began to, in general, separate from their earthly existence. A life on earth was seen as an illusion, and the afterlife was a place of hope. I wish we were together in class and I can kind of read the room, but these are larger concepts of faith, religion, and the history of faith and religion that I'm just going to briefly introduce you here so that we can understand that there is an increase in popularity because of larger issues and problems that are taking their toll on the empire. Because I already said it, I know I already said it, but Diocletian, remember Tetrarchy? He saw this rise in the Christian faith as a threat and did very aggressive persecutions against those who refused polytheism. They were widespread, and we are going to be looking later on in the semester at artworks based on those who were killed by order of Diocletian. The spread of the faith between 30 to 300, it was seen as kind of a novelty, and the fact that the Christian faith was non-exclusive to gender, because Mithraism and Serapis, they both were exclusive to men and only offered salvation to men. They were both extremely popular with soldiers, but the Christian faith, it not only encouraged or not only offered salvation to both men and women, but it encouraged equal participation of men and women, and therefore utilizing 50% of the population plus 50% of the population leads to it to have a more success rate, a better success rate of spreading and maintenance. Goodness gracious, we could talk so much about how women were vital to the establishment of the Christian faith. I can't get into it. Okay, Uh, how does this faith become legal? Remember Constantine? Constantine, who was born and raised a good Roman soldier, was born into a polytheistic practicing family. However, he wanted to be emperor of all. Right? After Diocletian sets up the Tetrarchy and then retires, Constantine says, I want to be king of everything, and he starts tearing through the empire to conquer it all. Well, it was during one of those key battles that, legend has it, the night before the battle, he had a vision. And in his vision, he saw a standard or a flag that had the symbol XPI on it. Now, these types of flags with these symbolic standards on them, it was extremely popular. All the Romans did this. You would have a flag with the symbol of various gods and goddesses in order to earn their favor for your victory. So in the morning, Constantine says, add that flag to our standards. And people are like, are you sure you want to add this illegal faith? And he's like, yeah, put it up. When he wins that battle, he then interprets this as the power of the Christos faith, the power of the Christian faith, and starts to, pay more attention to it. In the year 313, he signs the Edict of Milan. It's signed in the city of Milan, which was at the time the capital of the western portion of the empire. Remember Diocletian? West, east. So Milan. He's in Milan and he signs the Edict of Milan. The Edict of Milan says that Christianity is no longer illegal. This is a huge deal because for 300 years it's been illegal. For 300 years, Roman emperors have been ordering for the persecution, the death of Christians. And then now Constantine says it's a legit faith and should be added into the kind of canon of religion. So people start to rapidly pay more attention to this. And in the year 326, it becomes the official state religion, meaning that the emperors are Christian and they will allow for other faiths to exist. Constantine's not an idiot. He knows he can't wipe out polytheistic faith for one singular faith, but with the understanding that he is a Christian. On his deathbed, he is baptized. So it's estimated that before Constantine and the Edict of Milan, about 5% of the Roman population would have identified themselves as Christian, and then that rapidly increases. It becomes extremely popular because people are like, oh, what does the emperor believe? He's extremely successful. Maybe I should go attend some of these meetings. Maybe I should go see what's up with this new novelty god. Goodness gracious. Okay, so that happens. And when it is no longer an illegal faith, we're going to start to see art and artwork more widespread, more open, like literally out in the open air. But I want to rewind just a little bit to when it was still illegal, okay? And it had to be practiced underground, in secrecy, with catacombs.